I know. I'm always talking about how important it is to get clear on your grand scheme goals. You've allowed yourself to dream, which in today's climate is a big deal. Now you've got this big, fat vocal dream, and you're feeling overwhelmed and quite frankly stuck. But what can you do about it? Stick around to find out. Hey, welcome to the Monique on the Mic podcast. I'm your host, Monique B. Thomas. This show is your go-to resource for professional and aspiring singers. Every Monday, join me for a mix of solo episodes and insightful interviews where I share real artist stories, practical strategies, and mindset shifts. Whether you're just starting out or are already on your journey, you'll find the tools you need to transform your vocal path and feel supported. I keep it real, I keep it fun, and it's always useful and up to date. Let's get into it. It's always exciting when we get to the place we can express that we want to do something big, something we've never done before. For some, even that is a major step. But once you've done the dreaming and the scheming, you can often feel literally stuck with this big, fat, intangible dream because, simply put, it's so big. I know a little something about that because I'm in the habit of dreaming. Here's the thing. A dream is great, but what we really need is a goal. And a goal without a plan is simply a dream. In other words, we have to put some things in place in order for this dream to become reality. That is the whole point of a vision board. A vision board gets your creative juices flowing, allowing you to expand your thoughts and beliefs beyond what they are now. The vision board also sets your mind so that it is constantly, though unconsciously, on the lookout for people, places, and things and opportunities which are related to achieving those goals. This is all great and necessary, but it's still not a plan. So I'm going to share something a little personal with you all. I've been going through a rough period as I work on achieving a big, scary goal of mine. Honestly, I was feeling stuck. I felt like I was doing things regularly, but didn't feel like I was making any real headway on my goal. Now, you should know that I tend to be a solution-oriented and not problem-oriented person, so my brain is always ready to spot things that might help me. I happened on to two things that are changing my perspective, and I want to share them with you because I believe they will help you too. Please keep in mind that usually the most helpful things aren't necessarily mind-blowing, but rather very simple, easy-to-implement things which are easily overlooked. The first thing I want to talk about is the A-B-Z method. So we're going to start with the end desired result because that always determines our direction. Let's call it Z. So yes, Z is the big scary thing that you want to achieve. It's something you've never done or never had before, so be sure that it will require another scary thing. Change. A change in habits and the learning of new skills, which leads to a change in identity. Change is so scary, which is why this thing is hard and why so many people fail. You've got to know the why behind what it is that you're trying to do, because this why has to be important enough to fuel your efforts once your initial motivation wears off. And it will wear off, trust me. Just a side note, if your Z doesn't evoke excitement and fear, which, by the way, are very difficult to differentiate, you're not dreaming big enough. Remember, your reason behind wanting that big thing has to spark change. Let's use an example of something I coach on, which is helping novice jazz singers become ready to perform in public by developing a specific set of 25 songs. I'll use this throughout this episode so you can easily understand the A-B-Z method as it pertains to your own vocal goals. Now, this may seem out of order, but we have to look at what we will call A. A is pretty simple to understand. It is where you are now in relation to your goal. You'll have to assess the situation. What skills or habits are you lacking that would ultimately lead you to your goal? So, referring back to our goal of becoming a jazz singer, starting off with 25 songs, we'd need some way to track how many songs we have. I've created a template specifically designed to help you know how many and what type of jazz tunes you currently have. Check the show notes to download a free copy of my template. Each time you learn a new tune, you simply fill it in, and little by little, your list will grow, as well as your skill set and knowledge of the jazz repertoire. I have students who start with 0 or 1 or 2 tunes, to students who have 15 or more. One thing is sure, the student who has 15 tunes already learned knows more about jazz singing by the simple fact that they went through the process of learning those tunes. Since tunes are all different, each tune is going to teach you something different about your singing and about jazz. Therefore, by the time you get to 25 tunes that you can perform with a band, you have a bit more structure to your learning and jazz singing. You are no longer a complete jazz newbie. The idea is to have enough songs to perform a 90-minute show or 2 45-minute sets, which is the norm for most jazz gigs. This is why the number 25 is so important. Now let's look at B. B is what actually gets this big old scary project done. The reason it gets the project done is because it's all about your next best step. In other words, what can you do today that is actually going to move the needle forward on your project? This is particularly important because we often get sidetracked by doing things that don't matter. I wrote about this in a recent newsletter called Productive Procrastination. I'm a master of this, as most creatives are, because we get caught up in what I call the squirrel mind, where thoughts are whizzing through our brains. We know we have to do something, but we don't know which tasks are actually going to move the needle. So for B, ask yourself, what is my next best move? Again, going back to our example, how is that list coming along? Do any of the songs on your list need more work, technically, pronunciation-wise, or style-wise? If so, your next step is simply to work on that song. That could also include listening to many versions of that song, sung and non-sung versions, in order to help you with ideas on how to stylize the song. Please remember that it doesn't have to be perfect, but rather stable. You need to be able to get through the song with no glitches. The rest you'll figure out as you are performing with a band or with iReal Pro, which is what I recommend for singers who cannot accompany themselves on piano or guitar. That's just a start. You can't stay there. You got to get with a real band, though. Perhaps your B step is learning a new tune, which includes figuring out the right key as well. In any case, be sure that you'll always have something to do until that list is done. So each day, or as often as you have allotted time to give to this project, just keep asking that question and then execute. Do not be tempted to do more than one thing. Do the one thing and then check back with letter A to see how that moves things along and give yourself a little reward for completing the task. The last thing I want to talk about is really just a summary of what the ABZ method is. It is simply a not so daunting way to break down your big vocal goals into little steps. You see, avoiding overwhelm is key to keeping on track and making your goals achievable. One of my favorite sayings is, how do you eat an elephant? The answer is one bite at a time. The key takeaways for today's episode is to first allow yourself to dream. This is the first step to changing. Make sure your dream or goal is big and scary, and go ahead and start while you're afraid and excited. I like to say scaredy-sighted. This is letter Z. Next, take an assessment of where you are actually. This is letter A. Once you know what your current situation is, it's time to roll up your sleeves and ask yourself, what is my next best step today? Keep that step small and doable and make sure it gets done. This is step B. If that one step feels too big, then break that down into several steps that you can accomplish over a few days if you need to. Another reason you want to keep these steps doable is so that you stay motivated. Each time you complete a task, reward yourself. Do not skip this step. Rewarding yourself for even the smallest of steps is part of positive reinforcement. And as I'm recording this, I'm realizing that this is the step I've been skipping, which explains why I often feel a sense of drudgery when doing step B. See, no one is perfect, and I'm perfectly honest about where I am on this journey. So I'm going to reward myself today for completing this podcast episode because I've stopped doing that. I only did it in the beginning because it was hard and I was getting started. But now, because I've been podcasting for almost a year, can you believe it? I've forgotten to tell myself how proud I am to be still in the game. Apparently, most people quit podcasting around their 20th episode, so I'm doing really well. Yay for me. I hope this has been really helpful. So let me know in the comments, what goals are you scaredy-sighted about? I want to know. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're really liking what I'm throwing down, you'll love my Mike Masters newsletter. For more information on how to work with me and to sign up for the newsletter, visit www.moniquebthomas.com or check the show notes. Musically, Monique.